yourself, yet you're running for state rep. I can document that I'm right in what I'm saying. I can document that it's never been rescinded. And no judge can rescind the Constitution. It's got to be done by the people.
It's true.
So you guys are in violation of the law. Anybody that's an attorney that says the bar and is elected, they're violating the Constitution, and you yet you take the note, so hold it. Explain that to me.
Can I take that one? I don't want to take away from Ms. Landis' presentation, but if you're talking about the constitutional prohibition against dual office holding,
It doesn't say that.
no, I'm quite familiar with the Constitution. I know you are. We can debate that. I don't want to take away from Ashley's presentation, but because I'm a lawyer does not make me a member of the judicial branch. I have ethical responsibilities to the court because the court licenses me, but I am not a judge. I don't have the power to do anything other than other people. But we can talk about that afterwards. I don't want to take away.
No, listen,
Ashley,
hey.
I'm sorry.
No, don't apologize. This is really what we're here to do.
I got all
Because this is fundamentally what this is going to come down to. You are going to have people who think the system works fine. But I would submit that it does not work fine. And I can tell you right now that the legislature, controlling not only the courts, but the executive branch of government, which they do through the Budget and Control Board, which serves the function of the governor. No other state has a Budget and Control Board. And I mean, look, what that board does is a shirking of the duties of both branches, and they like it that way. That's right. Nobody has to take responsibility for mid-year budget cuts in the legislature. Budget and Control Board does it. And by Budget and Control Board, we sometimes mean the employees at the Budget and Control Board. And that's a fact, and they've absolutely admitted that when it comes sometimes to authorizing some of the extra revenue that comes in, that happens with the employees. So, bonded indebtedness. They vote on this broad, yeah, we're going to give you the ability to issue bonds, but the Budget and Control Board gets to approve them. That's an appropriation function. The legislature shirks it over. And the executive branch, by the way, you think they want that responsibility? I'm not just blaming the legislature for this. With the exception of Mark Sanford, I've never seen a governor stand up and truly demand full responsibility for the executive branch of government be where the founders intended that it be. With one person who is elected by all of you. Not 5 people, one of whom, again, sits on the board by virtue of seniority and alphabetical order. That's right, Hugh Leatherman, Senate Finance Chairman. The rules of the Senate say you get to choose your committee based on how senior you are. That's a fact. All right? Now, there's someone else in the Senate who served as long as Senator Leatherman. So how do they decide? L comes before Peeler. I'm not making this up. That guy is accountable to whom?
The alphabet.
When he voted to go ahead and make a deal where we gave the pension an 8% assumed rate of return so they could give state employees a raise? 8%. Anybody looking at that kind of investment return? Yeah, didn't think so. Those are the decisions they make every day on that board. Hugh Leatherman's one of 5 people who does it. Well, I can tell you what it is at least time for. How about some accountability in the Senate so that at least you can hold leadership accountable through President Pro Tem appointing committees. Now, the House isn't perfect. Frankly, these leadership positions ought to control process and procedure, not appoint the executive branch. And I'll ask these 2 guys in the back, jump in, because I like a spirited debate. It's fair enough. Really, it is. Should legislative leaders be allowed to appoint to boards and commissions that control state government?
No.
Does anybody think that's a good plan? To let the Speaker of the House, the President Pro Tem of the Senate, Senate Finance Chairman, let those guys appoint the boards and commissions they made up to run state government? Is that a role for legislators? Okay, nobody's going to argue that. Well, that's good. That makes me happy. We can at least agree on that. We would also toss out it's time to consolidate all of these, constitutional officers. Because that's just another way of diffusing the accountability, right? Look, no government is perfect, and that's why our founders were so clear that it needed to be limited to those functions that only your government could legitimately and should legitimately perform. And that you have 3 branches of government. One to make the laws, one to run the functions of government, and one to interpret the laws. It's a pretty good system, folks. We got to think about why we don't want it here. Because they don't want it here. Question is, do you? Now, moving on to some other structural changes, and those are the 2 big ones. And there'll be a hard fight, because there are a lot of people who agree with you. They think the legislature should choose the judges. They're okay with 3 guys appointing the screening committee that picks them. There are a lot of people who think that's the right thing to do, and they have arguable reasons for it. But I think it comes down to judicial independence. Like everything, accountability, checks and balances. Now, here's a third one. This is one that, believe it or not, they don't say they don't like this. They can't dare tell you that they think this is a bad idea. But they just don't want to shorten the legislative session. They don't want to shorten the legislative session. Do you want to know why I think they don't? Because it's fun. Right? A lot of parties. A lot of people loving up on them. There you go. But you know what? Texas conducts its legislative session every other year. And half the time. Why can't we do that in South Carolina? We can. And we should. You need to limit the legislature so much that it's back to making laws, which is its job. You need a citizen legislature, people who can serve, who don't have to give up everything to go to Columbia, and don't have incentive to go there for any other reason than to defend and protect your liberty, which is the responsibility of your elected officials in the country, right? That's the job. So let's have a citizen legislature. Now, moving on to the 5 quick things that are going to make politicians more accountable, because here's the recipe for corruption. Concentration of power and secrecy. Concentration of power plus secrecy equals corruption. Any examples of where that's not true? When you have a couple of people with all the power and everything they do is in secret? One guy tossed out, I threw that, and one guy said, well, heaven. I don't know, I think God's pretty transparent. What you see is what you get there. So, that's what we have in South Carolina. Concentration of power and secrecy equals corruption. What do we have to do to get at that? First up, it's time to open up these incentive deals, guys. There is no reason why they should be allowed to cut hundreds of millions of dollars in deals, billion-dollar deals behind closed doors, and never be accountable to you for it. If I asked you right now to get your checkbook out, here's what I want you to do. I want you to give me a blank check. Now, I'm not going to tell you how much it's for. I'm not going to tell you to whom I'm going to make the check out. When it comes time to telling you whether your investment paid off, yeah, I'm not going to tell you that. And I can tell you that it's going to help you and you. Rest of you, yeah, not so much. We'll get to you another time. But that is how it works. Now, who's going to give me that check? Because I'm going to take it back to Columbia, and I'm going to give it to legislative leaders and the governor. And I'm going to tell them to knock themselves out. You guys want to do that? Do you guys trust any of them to invest in a business for you? Of course not. Because they hold a lot of ribbon cuttings, but they don't have you showing up at the funerals when these companies go bankrupt, right? Nobody holds a gosh, we hate to admit this, but Air South went bust. And here's the money you invested, and here are the, all the jobs that are going to be, people are going to be out of work now. Who's ever been to one of those press conferences? Not so much. You know what? If we keep up this mentality, these guys are going to be opening up, cutting ribbons at lemonade stands, and bragging about the job creation. That's where we are. It's ridiculous. No secrecy and incentives. If they can control billions of dollars in public money,